let me just firstly say thank you, Leven, for joining us. And
I appreciate being here.
So why are you here? Tell us why you're here.
I'm here because I made the mistake of picking up a microphone. I just started talking about my love of postal history on the internet this last August, and apparently people are interested in what I have to say. It's been a very interesting experience, to say the very least, but it's been very exciting as well. And it's been really fascinating to see how much interest there is in younger people in my old man hobby.
And you're here because I also kind of found you on TikTok and said, hello, I think it'd be great if we could talk a little bit more about your passions and about TikTok. So you classify yourself as a postal historian, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and how would you describe that?
Well, I got into stamps the way everybody did, the same boring story. Started as a kid, picked it up later in life. But I had two really fantastic mentors, Ken Stack and Richard Fajola. And in 2010, there was a sale called the Risvold sale done by Spink Shreves that Ken really pushed me to go and take a look at. And one of the greatest gifts I've ever received was Richard Fajola actually gave me a copy of that catalog. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. In my opinion, the Risvold sale in 100 years will be seen on the same level as the Bill Gross sale is. It absolutely the finest collection of American philatelic items of history that I am aware of ever has been compiled in existence. It's really incredible. And it really sparked my interest in the collection of postal history as primary source documents of history. And that's what really attracts me to it, is I feel like it allows you to make a deeper connection and better understand not only the narratives that are told in history, but the flaws in the narratives that are told in history and the complexity of the narratives that are told throughout history. Because there's always more, there's always something deeper, and the root of all history books is going to be primary source documents like postal history.
Absolutely. So what made you take that kind of interest and share it with the world on TikTok?
Well, like all middle-aged white guys, I like to think I have interesting things to say, but I'm very aware how endemic that is among my demographic. And I just decided to take a shot at it one day, and I called up a buddy's kid who had just gotten out of high school and was looking to get a job in social media, and worked out a deal with him to start doing some editing. And I just started talking. And if you want to go see every video I've ever done is still up on TikTok. And the first 25 or so are pretty excruciating. I have a hard time watching them at this point, to be honest with you.
You like watching what you do now?
Yeah, I like much better what I'm doing now, and I think I'm learning a lot about what people are looking for. And I think that's what's been so interesting is that it's not about your subject matter, it's about presentation. And it's about the way you approach topics. I mean, my very first semi-viral video of about 300,000 views was my 10th or 12th video, and it was about a really common basic tobacco tax revenue stamp that was put out in the 1950s.
And so why do you think that one did well?
Because I made it relevant. I think that it's really easy to get lost in the entrancement that we all have of the beauty of stamps. But I got into the exact reasons that different cigarettes were classified in different ways, and how those classifications actually came to be, and what people had done in order to circumvent taxing from the federal government. And I think that's a narrative that is relevant to everybody. They can understand trying to not have to pay a tax on tobacco or cards or gas or whatever the case may be. And so it was able to make a personal, visceral connection with folks that I think is sometimes a little bit difficult to do with stamps.
So explain that. So if you were to talk about a stamp on your channel, what would happen there? Would people not engage with it then?
It all depends on my presentation. I think there's this complete misnomer that success or failure in social media or anything else is based upon the material that you provide, and that is 1000% not true. My very best performing videos are generally on the least expensive items that you can imagine, and it's really shown me that the narrative is the part that makes a connection with people, not necessarily the monetary value or the item itself. And so I talk about stamps, I would say probably 75–80% of the videos that I do are in some way philatelic related. But I don't start it off with, this is a stamp, because that is not something that people can relate to.
And I guess the generations that are using social media is that swipe mindset, isn't it? So if you're not catching people in the first few seconds, you start talking about a stamp, you might lose people. Is that fair to say?
I think it is, but I think the impression is that it's somehow the stamp that is the issue. But the truth of the matter is that it's not that it's the stamp is not interesting. It's that we aren't making that relationship with folks, because it's not just the younger generation. I mean, if you even look at my generation, I'm 43 years old. I was born in 1980. Mail was already becoming less and less relevant every single day. And for my kids who are 18 and 22, it has almost no relevance, stamps in particular, because they don't have that visceral interaction with it that they do with other objects. And so I think accepting that stamps as a utility and visceral item for folks is a thing of the past, and we really have to find ways to highlight the history, because we have this huge advantage in stamp collecting and postal history, where we have the ability to study history at the most microscopic level that is almost impossible with any other collectible out there. And I think that that's the point that we really need to drill home, because cultural relevance has gone. It is gone, and it's been gone for years and years. The hobby, I can say the APS has been in decline since the 1980s. And I think that decline is directly pinned to the fact that mail becomes less and less relevant as it becomes the way people, doesn't become the way people communicate. And that's happened with the advent of, everything from the telephone to the computer. And so at this point, we're 40–50 years removed from a point in time where folks would generally communicate by letter. And we really need to accept that cultural relevance is not something that we can recapture.
So that cultural relevance with the use of stamps for postal use. But I guess what you're saying is that in the postal history space, you can connect that cultural relevance to so much more. Is that, am I getting that?
Yeah, and not just postal history, with stamps as well. I mean, I think that there is a huge cultural relevance in wanting to learn and understand history and understand the different threads of history. I think you could do an enormous YouTube channel on nothing but the advancement of colonization through the use of stamps. But rather than trying to put that stamp front and center as this centerpiece image, you start with the history, because that's the hook. That's the thing that people can relate to, is they understand that to understand who we are culturally, we have to understand where we came from. And stamps and postal history both do a fantastic job of telling that story. We're just not telling it for them. We're trying to throw an image of a stamp on a screen and find that to be compelling, when at one point stamps were that kind of compelling imagery, where it was one of the finest images available to folks, especially when you think about engraved stamps and you think about the other images that were available in magazines and everything else. It was breathtaking. But that's not true anymore, and it hasn't been true for many decades at this point, because we are bombarded by so much imagery all the time that we have to let go of the idea that the imagery of stamps is what is going to sell them, because they are not the top-notch imagery that they were at one point.
Yeah. So if that storytelling is wider, because you have to rely on people who haven't maybe used or are not so used to using stamps in a day-to-day, does that mean that you're having to reach out to different, I mean, you obviously are reaching different audiences? Like you and I had a conversation recently, which is that a lot of the philatelic businesses, societies, etc., that are on Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, there's kind of like, we're all at that kind of like 3,000, 5,000 followers. That's about it. And you've got 27, 29,000 followers, something like that, right? So you've obviously got
29.7, going to push over 30
let's
here.
get to 5,000 by the end of this call. So, so there's obviously different other collectibles or other hobbyists that are coming into that, or do you think it's just people, general members of the public who, you know, maybe like gardening or cooking or something, you know, or are there kind of, you know, are you seeing any very strongly related other collectible crossover?
You know, I am, and the collectible crossover is largely from areas like ephemera, manuscript, book collecting. I think these are enormous opportunity areas for stamp collecting going forward because they're already accustomed to handling paper items. I think that there's less crossover from things like coins and sport cards and license plates and things of that nature because they are still super culturally relevant things. Everybody still has to go to the DMV and get license plates. And so that is an item that they have a connection with. And that's just not true of stamps. And we really, but I think that what we're not doing, where we have this enormous opportunity, is that stamps and postal history and covers, they're all ephemera. They were designed for a utility purpose that was then designed to be thrown away. That was the whole idea behind stamps and covers, is they had a purpose and then they would be discarded. And I think that there's so much to learn about the human experience and about history by looking at these utility items that were intended to be discarded. Because whenever you read a book or even a diary, you know, so often the folks that were writing those had an eye towards posterity. And we're concerned about how it would be perceived in the future. And I think that when you are collecting things that were intended to be discarded, it gives you a much more intimate connection with people of the past. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure. I talked a lot there, and I'm not sure I answered the question.
Well, I probably touched on I'm just like nodding the whole time. Yeah, I mean, the question was about crossover, because you know, in the PTS, we're seeing more of our members. They're already kind of maybe doing stamps and coins, starting to move into the trading card space. And I think what you're saying is that some of that crossover, getting people particularly into postal history, is going to be in, you know, like you said, ephemera, papers, etc., books and that kind of thing. So the trading card stuff feels like it's like, whoa, completely far away from target audience. Or do you think that there is things that philately can learn from the enormous growth that we're seeing in some of those collectible areas?
Well, history is not moving into the trading card space. History has been an enormous, awful failure in the trading card space since the advent of trading cards. For every gorgeous sports tobacco card there are 10,000 cards that are history or topical based that you can buy in lots of thousands off of eBay for just $100. And that's true all the way up to when I was a kid. I collected sports cards. I mean, it was the 90s. I'm from Wyoming. It's football, you know. And even then they had Desert Storm cards, and they had, you know, different there's all of this sports card stuff where they continue to try to make crossovers, and it continues to fail over and over and over and over and over and over again for well over 100 years. And I think that for whatever reason, sports cards has dominated that. And I think that it's really hard to transfer history to that. There's actually a product called it's called Historic Autographs or something like that, and they take pieces of, you know, say a 1600s newspaper and chop it up and throw them in as relic cards for this for these hobby boxes, and they sell you, like, I don't know, 6-8 of these relic cards that are old chopped up newspapers and bits of music with a picture of Mozart on it, and they want $130 for a box. But the truth is that stuff is confetti. I mean, that stuff could be found in the discard pile of any ephemera dealer who's worth their salt. And so it's really, you don't have the acceptance of things like chopping up jerseys and then making a card out of it. Whereas with sports cards, you have this enormous marketplace that has accepted that as a way to do it. And I don't know anybody that would be interested that is a serious historical collector in doing the same thing with cards. And I think that's kind of a red herring for us because we don't have the advantage of being on the television every night. And we really have to get folks to understand that there is a deeper opportunity to research history, because that is something that if you can get somebody that collects World War II history to understand the absolute ocean of philatelic material that's available out there, is going to be really intriguing.
Yeah, that's it. You can collect history in so many ways. You might not be able to collect stamps, or might not have the interest in collecting stamps in the same way. So
Yep.
You mentioned, I saw your TikTok teaser about this talk, obviously. And you mentioned that you would be touching on a few kind of maybe controversial subjects. One is around investments. And I think that kind of, because that's the thing with the trading card space, is there's so much like investment marketing at the moment on these things, because they're kind of increasing in price. If you get the right ones, I guess stamps do in some cases as well, but certainly the PTS is in a position where if you buy something, whether it's a stamp or a cover or collection, that you do it because you love it, not because you're hoping to make some money off it. What's your kind of opinion in that space around, you know, the attraction of the financial aspects of philately and postal history?
Well, the history of stamp collecting is full of those ups and downs. I mean, you had huge, at least in the U.S. market, I know there were huge run-ups in the 1920s where you could buy mint sheets and they would appreciate in just a matter of months, and you'd be able to make a profit of it, with an immediate fall off in collecting during World War II, and then another run-up in the 80s with a following price collapse. But we always had the advantage during those times of being culturally relevant. And I think that one of the things that we lack that some of those other collectible communities do is they're very financially based collectible communities. Sports betting, for example, is endemic to all kinds of fans of sports. And I think the sports cards and the trading market and grading, and the idea of the raffle style ripping of packs and things of that nature definitely feed into that. And I think the same thing can be true of coin collecting. I mean, the same gentlemen that deal in historic and rare coins also buy and sell gold and silver on the bullion market. And so again, there is this deep financial entrenchment in those hobbies that we don't necessarily have in stamp collecting. And I think, again, it doesn't in any way address the real issue, which is cultural relevancy. I think that we're just kind of puttering around the edges and hoping that it pays off. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the history of the hobby, we've been puttering around those edges since after the collapse of prices in the 80s.
So what can we do to break the storytelling more culturally relevant, if that's the challenge? Like, what, so you say, you know, the product is not the issue, it's how we market the product, that we as a hobby, you know, we're all passionate about it, we're all wanting to be, you know, in this for the next however long we've got, right? So what can we be doing?
We have to get out of our box. You know, when you get into stamps on social media, there are, as we talked before, there's probably a community of 3,000 to 5,000 people that are active, and there's a lot of interesting content that's put out. But all of that content is for other stamp collectors. It's stamp centric, and it doesn't highlight the deeper stories that are available through postal history. And I think that the only way to get it out is through social media. And I think more importantly, you know, we're at a point in time where you really have to accept that if you aren't relevant on social media, then you're dying. You have to find a way to do that. And you know, and I'm shocked by my success. I had no idea that I would ever be as successful as I am. And I think that it's really encouraging because there's lots of guys much smarter than I am that tell much better stories than I do in this hobby. I am constantly impressed at how I'm not even close to the smartest guy in the room when it comes to philately. And I think that I hope that other people see what I'm doing and are like, well, I can do a better job than this guy. And I really think that that's the future of stamp collecting, because there are so many fascinating people with fascinating stories to tell, and finding a way to connect with the general public. I think that really the sky's the limit. because there are so many people that collect historical items, and there are so few people that consider philatelies a part of that collection.
So sharing your story. So if you're a, serious philatelist, you've got an awesome collection, you've spent years, if not decades, developing the story, open philately, finding beautiful pieces to go alongside your collection. At the moment, I guess in philately, the idea is that you would become an exhibitor, that you would start to exhibit your collection, that you go into an FIP type show format, start with your local society, go up to national, end up with international, and refine and refine and refine how you tell your story based on FIP rules. That would be the logical kind of organized way, philately way of doing things. Thoughts, first of all?
My first thought is I'm not an exhibitor. I've never exhibited, so I come from it from being from a lack of information. Will be the first thing I would say. But more importantly, I think that that as important as exhibiting and as fascinating as exhibiting is, I think that it is very, very limiting. I think that the future is going to be folks that are going to be out of garage sales and see a box of letters and are like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I wonder what's in there. And then everything else develops out of that. I think the problem is that we see exhibiting as a developmental portion of collecting, and the truth is that's just for us. Nobody else, nobody's going to download a PDF that is a master level thesis on blockade run covers. Although I can tell you one of the most fascinating talks I've ever been to was one by Steve Walsky years ago, where he had discovered and identified, I don't know, a half a dozen covers that had run the blockade during the American Revolution, and it was absolutely I was floored that you could, as a private citizen, do research and identify items that were then blockade run that had not previously been identified. And I think he did it for it was years ago, so I'm not sure. Civil War, Revolution, he had a couple of different things in there. But to me, that's the part that's mind blowing, is that narrative, not the item itself.
Yeah, because I think that, like you said, no one's going to download PDFs. So I was going to mention our display your way room, which is a new concept we've developed for Virtual Stampex, which is to try and break that, to try and let people talk to the person with the collection, watch a related video. And what we found through this pilot is that a lot of people who want to display their collection, they absolutely want to tell their story with the product that they've got, are not comfortable doing video content. Do you think that we have to do video content in order to engage with these wider communities around the kind of history narrative and making it culturally relevant? Or do you think there's still a space for, downloads and websites with lots of text and formal meetings and that kind of thing?
Well, I think there's always space for that, as long as we understand that that's for us and not for the wider public. And I do think video content is absolutely necessary to tell the story, because that's how people consume content these days, is they consume it in video content. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff in the news about how social media is being used as a search engine similar to Google, because that's how people are looking to absorb their content. When I am trying to figure out whether or not a mortar that I'm using is appropriate for the tile that I'm doing, I'm not going to go and search and look for a PDF file about it. I'm going to go and search YouTube and look for a gentleman that's actually laying tile.
Yes. And I read something recently. It was somebody on X, one of my small 5,000 philatelic community friends, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember who it is. If you're here in the talk, tell me if I'm quoting you. But someone posted something, which is that there's an article which showed that Generation X now don't look at websites to determine whether they trust a brand. They look to social media to determine whether they want to buy, sell, engage with that brand, because they want to see real people, frequent content, caring, community vision. They don't want to see just a lot of static pages which someone could produce in a matter of minutes, hours nowadays. So that kind of the difference in how people are engaging. And someone said to me the other day, oh, you need to advertise Stampex on the back of milk cartons. And I was saying people don't look at the back of milk cartons when they're eating their breakfast anymore. They look at their mobile phone. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on YouTube. That's what people look at. Meals, social engagement. So they're always, people are always on their phone.
Yeah. Well, and it's a question of accessibility too. That's the other issue with exhibiting, is that it's the whole enchilada. You have to eat a whale to learn about a philatelic exhibit. I mean, it's almost hard to take it piecemeal. And so when you break it down item by item and show something that is relevant that you could pick up at a yard sale and then tell a story behind it, that's something that people can connect with. Whereas an enormous exhibit is not something that is going to make a connection. It's impressive, but it's not something that is going to make somebody say, oh, wow, I can do that.
Yeah. So one of the reasons, though, that I think that, well, one, you've obviously got a good following, so you're doing the right thing on TikTok. But the reason why the philatelic community like you, and trust me, they do, they're all commenting saying, here, totally agree with what you're saying. And I know that you've started to like kind of partner with some brands, like I know you did sort of a piece with Stamp Auction Network. The reason why the philatelic community love you is because you actually, you do have an enormous amount of credibility also within your subject matter. You know, you're not someone who's a content creator who's picking up something random in a yard sale, doing a little bit of Googling and trying to make a story out of it. You do actually understand the product as well. So where would you, so when it comes to sort of trying to get out of our box and engage with more people, what do you think those barriers to entry are? Is it more on the technical side, or is it the ability to get your phone, pick up the camera, start talking? You know, where do you think those hurdles are that we need to get over?
I think the number one is to question our own narrative. We continue to believe that because we have such a connection with stamps, that the stamps will sell themselves. And we just have to let that go. It's like showing pictures of a rotary phone and expecting people to get excited about it when all people see is something that's an antique. And that's what they see when they see stamps. And it's going to take a little bit more work. But I think that the payoff is that there's so much more. I mean, you can literally find connection to any major or minor historical figure, no matter how big or small, through philately. And that is just not true anywhere else. And I think the more we're able to drive that home, the more we are going to attract very serious collectors that at this point in time only see philately as just stamps. And even with stamps themselves, things like revenue stamps, I think, tell fascinating stories. And there's so many folks that could do a good job of telling them. And I think that trying to approach social media from a focus of what is my narrative, and then weave the stamp into it, rather than what is my stamp, what is my narrative around it? And that you have to put that narrative face forward rather than the stamp face forward, because that's what really people are connecting with.
So do you think that's going to be more on the looking at the kind of philatelic ecosystem, if you like, and you have the societies and the collectors and the dealers and the auction houses, given that the dealers, you know, there's product, it's selling product, it's obviously building relationships with clients, but that is, you know, that can be quite insular. And then you've got the auction houses who are it's the next sale, it's the next consignment. So the kind of bigger picture, do you think that is going to rely on more of the societies like ourselves or the APS or the Royal, or do you think it's going to lean on, you know, collectors like yourself kind of volunteering the time, putting that passion into things, the time and effort? Part of the hobby then becomes, you know, creating the content as well as collecting.
You know, I think it will have to, and I'll say this. I mentioned the Risvold sale earlier, and it's still, in my opinion, one of the finest catalogs that's ever been put out there. I give full credit to Spinks Reeves, even now, you know, 15 years on or whatever it is. But the reason that catalog is so fascinating, and I would recommend anybody to pick it up, is that the whole thing is a narrative. It's about the westward expansion of America, and it takes it chronologically from coast to coast with philatelic items in the medium, and it tells that narrative that is so intriguing. And I think the bottom line is that the more we're able to do that, the better our prospects are going to be with buyers, and the more people are going to understand the value. I think one of the things that's so attractive about postal history is the amount of history you can buy for such an incredibly low price. I mean, the vast majority of the items that I get that are doing 250,000 views are like $10 items, $20 items. And the only way to get people to invest in that whole idea and to bring up the entire market is for there to be that enough people that you're going to see that raise in prices. And I think long term, that's our best prospect as a hobby.
So in terms of the other areas then that are, ephemera, I certainly see it when I go to do valuations, is that actually people don't realize that there's history in what they're trying to sell, whatever they found in the attic. You start to ask a question, you say, oh, this is interesting. There's only one cover in this entire room of material that's from Italy. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that was because my mother met someone, her boyfriend, and then she cheated. They get this story, and then it's fascinating, and you're like, keep the cover. That's your history there, right there. So ancestry, ephemera, books, all of that kind of stuff. Are you seeing those areas, those hobbies, and those kind of trade bodies and the societies that are in those areas doing things that, again, we should be looking to, or there's collaboration opportunities, or have we got all of these kind of antique sort of areas not really engaging in this narrative cultural relevance space?
To answer your question, I think that there's an enormous opportunity there, but I think that they are doing an equally poor job on the social. The only real social media presence I see for ephemera dealers, there are some very good rare book and manuscript dealers that do some really fantastic content. But as far as ephemera and paper goods go, there's so much of it out there, and it's not really possible to catalog, and so it's really daunting the same way that philately and particularly postal history are for folks. But I think that ocean of the unknowable also has a certain attraction to it that almost no other collectible can. I mean, there's no other collectible I know aside from postal history and ephemera where there is so much volume. There's so much stuff that you can never put it in a book. And that's there. We've tried to do it, and we have 40,000 books on it, and we're still not there. There's still not in any way any kind of serious philatelic writing aside from a list of post offices done about Wyoming postal history. There's lots of articles scattered throughout magazines, but there's so many areas where that is so true, and I think that's true of ephemera as well. And I think that unfortunately, I don't know of anybody that we could take a lot of lessons from in that space. But I do think that looking at some of the ways that rare book guys are doing some of their social media, Reed Moon, and there's an Irish gentleman. I think he's Irish. I hope I don't get Tom Ailing, I want to say is his name. Also does a really good job on TikTok. But I think there is something to be learned, because if you watch those guys, it is all about the overall arching narrative and tying it back into history.
Fabulous. So you mentioned there's thousands of items that, there's so many items. You can get things for less than $10. Mm-hmm. So we could just say to you, right, Leven, we'll just all fire out videos. We'll just pick up the item. We'll talk about fire out the interviews. But my understanding is that for you to do one of your videos obviously takes some time. So is that another kind of barrier? Do you think people just don't have the time to produce the type of quality that the likes of the TikTok algorithm, the YouTube algorithm is going to push out?
Whether it's TikTok or YouTube or whatever the case may be, I think that it does take a lot of time, effort, and energy. I mean, I have a pretty highly edited content. Every one of my videos, which range anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes, we're at least 4 to 8 hours in man hours to produce that content. I definitely think I could scale back the production level and do some longer, half-hour, 40-minute videos, and maybe only put in, 30 or 40 hours. But I say that not having done it, so I don't know how that would work out. So it's definitely you have to put in the work and put in the effort, and it's more difficult. But with everything else being so incredibly ineffective, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Okay, we're getting lots of questions, and I feel like if I ask the question, because there's a reactions button in this webinar, so I think if I ask the question, who wants to see slightly longer videos from Leven? I think everyone's going to be putting it thumbs up, right? I think if it's okay with you, because there's so many like questions and so many people here, I think maybe we move into a kind of time for questions. Is that okay? Do you want to, is there anything you want to say before we kind of open the floor?
If you, the only thing I give you a little plug here and tell you if you want to support me, I'll get my Suzanne, my link tree. I'm on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Really focused on growing my YouTube right now, but it also has my my Venmo there if you'd like to support me financially. And the best thing anybody could do to help is I'm looking for sponsors and advertisers. The real holdback on more social media is it is incredibly time consuming and expensive to do. I'm actually doing this off of a $20 ring light and my Android phone right now. So anybody interested in having me help them sell the history, please hit me up.
Thanks, Leven. I guess again, if people haven't got that ability or the, a follow, a share, commenting, building the community, sharing the fact they've met you now virtually over would be great. Right, okay, everyone who wants to ask a question, keep putting them in the box. If you're comfortable going on to camera, these sessions are recorded and they will go up into the auditorium as a recorded session, and they will then go onto the PTS and Stampex YouTube channel. So be aware that if you do come on to the webinar in video format, that will be recorded. So if you do want to do that, then please raise your hand in the in this webinar. Otherwise, I think we'll start with the questions that are in the Q&A. So first question, have you noticed, these are all at you, Leven, these are not at me. Have you noticed a difference in what drives engagement or develops audiences from TikTok to YouTube now that you are cross-posting there? Is a narrative focus as well responded to on YouTube as it is on TikTok?
It absolutely is. It 100% is all about the narrative, and it's all about giving people a viewpoint or a piece of history that they had not previously considered, or a piece that they thought they had considered and knew what it was about, and have something, have an object that stands in front of them that shows that belief in what history is not necessarily true. That's what people get really interested in.
Okay, that's great. And this is my question is, you mentioned the other day about TikTok that your reply to the comments, that you get comments and you try and reply to those. Obviously, if they're silly comments, you're not going to reply. But do you get the same level of engagement on TikTok? Is that the same type of community where people are chatting away?
Yeah, I get a lot of comments. I have a very active comment section, and I really encourage that. I try to reply as many as I can, obviously, of the series comments. But I think that's what's driving it, is that I really try to not tell the whole story. I try to give you enough that you're going to say, I want to go Google it. And there's an amount of buy-in that when you do that when I finish talking to you and you're like, wow, that's really interesting, now I'm going to go and look it up. At that point, you've made a personal investment in it, and it makes it that much easier to market to you or to sell you things or to have you watch my next video, because you have then taken the steps to invest your own time in that topic.
Oh, I love it. It's like a teaser. First few seconds, whether you get them or not, and then whether you get them. Like in our talk earlier, someone mentioned that you've got to build up interest in people, and they've got to be interested. They've got to find that journey themselves. You can't just tell them you should be interested in this, obviously. Right, next comment and question from John Simper. Says, hey Leven, it's John from Philatelic, who is also a trusted PTS member. I absolutely love your content on TikTok, and you inspire me to do more on that platform. So you're inspiring people. That's brilliant. That's obviously great for the hobby. Last weekend, I did my first live broadcast of me sorting through some stamps. There were so many non-philatelists that found it interesting. It's all about how we present our hobby, I believe, which is what you're saying. My question would be, do you think consistency is key when uploading content?
I definitely think that it's super important, but I think again, there are so many things you can do to make small differences, and it's easy to play around the edges of what time you post, how consistently you post, what hashtags you use, and blah 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 blah. And the truth is that all of those are going to make very minor differences. And if instead you focus all of your effort on your narrative and the story that you're telling, those other things might make the difference between, say, 3 or 7,000 view video. But if you hit that narrative on the nose, you could be looking at 100,000 or 200,000. And I think that that's the problem, is that we get caught up in all of these small picture ideas of all of the semantics of exactly how social media is operated. I mean, I'm not a social media guy. I've never done a lot of social media before I did this, but I only focus on the narrative. All I care about is the story that I'm telling, and then let the chips fall where they may. I mean, I have videos that bomb all of the time, and it's very interesting to me that those that do succeed are narrative forward.
And I guess that's it, is you've got to try it, learn from it, try it again.
Yep.
So
but don't worry about the little stuff. Don't like all that other little, like that's all helpful, but it's just like a $600 swimsuit for an Olympic swimmer, is that it doesn't make any sense to worry about that swimsuit until you have that 15 years of practice and competition behind you.
And luckily, we can look at your TikTok and we can learn from which ones have bombed.
Yeah, you go to watch. Yeah, my very first video was on those little golden encased stamps that they sold forever and ever, and I think I did 1,000 views on it. And I recently redid that video again on the same exact subject matter, something that all collectors, at least in the US, have lying around in their collections. And this time around, I did 400,000 views. I think I'm just north of that right now on those little gold encased stamps. And it just goes to show you how impactful the narrative it is, rather than the item itself, because that's something that everybody has and nobody's interested in that's a serious person in the hobby.
Yeah, correct. Okay, so another question from someone in the room. I think this is covered, but it might be just some other things in your mind that you want to bring up at this point. So while it is inevitable that using social media is key to reaching out to the younger generation and start interest in the hobby via storytelling and reels and videos, what would you suggest as the next steps to hook them in and make them dig deeper into the topics rather than remain on the surface and keep scrolling and swiping to the next video on their phones?
Be interesting.
Interesting. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, you have to be interesting. If you want people to pay more attention to you, then you need to be more interesting. It's not their job to be interested in what you're doing. It's your job to hook them in. And I think that's it. And I think it's a real misnomer. We keep talking about how it's the younger generation. Like I said, I'm 43 and I wouldn't consider myself the younger generation at all. But sitting in any room of philatelists, that's true. And I think we have to get away from the idea that it's younger people that are doing this, because it's not just younger people. It's everybody from 50 on down at this point is centric around social media. And the bottom line is that if they're not paying attention to what you're doing on social media, it's because what you're doing on social media isn't interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this younger thing, I mean, I like that we keep on returning to you and I are the same age, right? And we feel young, we feel so young, and then we feel old when we kind of go onto TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
But in philately, we're young. In the social media, we're ancient dinosaurs trying to understand the algorithm. But I think that was really another point about brilliant advice on, not trying to overanalyze absolutely what will work. But there's another question here, which is, does the algorithm support collaborations? Would it be better if different bodies, I'll just reword this based on this. So is it better for us to have the different societies and collectors working together to promote videos together? And can we work with other collectibles? I think that the point is that going to help the algorithm? Is that something you think we should be kind of investing in, spending some money on, spending some time on, or do you think it will naturally happen, or do you think it doesn't really matter? We just focus on your own story, what you want to tell to, not even to your audience, because your audience doesn't matter. It's the story that matters, and your audience will find you.
I think that's true if you can find an account that has enough of a social media presence that they can make a difference, but I'm not aware of those social media accounts out there. And again, I think that's another one of those things about trying to trick the algorithm rather than just being more interesting. And I think that's where we need to put our focus is on our narrative. And I think that's one of the hardest things about being on TikTok is that when I have a video that I put 10, 12 hours into even, and it does 1,000 views, and I have to go in there and say, what did I do wrong? Rather than they just don't get it. That has to be your approach, because if they weren't interested, it's because you didn't present it properly. And I think that as important as those things can be, I don't think that anybody has a real social media presence to move the needle on that.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess you've also got to enjoy doing it. You don't want to feel like you have to do it, find it quite stressful to have to put posts on and so I think that was kind of to John's point, is consistency key. You know, we can all get into that habit of we must post every day, and then you spend 4 hours every day creating content, and then it bombs, then you know you're not enjoying it. So I guess you have to enjoy it.
Well, you do, and the bottom line is that when you have anything that hits viral, it's not luck, it's because people watch it. You know, when something goes really big on YouTube or TikTok or whatever the case may be, the reason that it's going viral is because people are watching it. And it's all based upon those metrics. I can tell you probably within the first hour or two, looking at my metrics, of roughly whether or not my video stands a chance of doing better than average. And it's because it is a very simple data calculation, not simple, it's a huge algorithm. It is a very complex data calculation that is done, but that data calculation is all based around how well you're holding people's attention. And so if people are not watching you, then you're doing something wrong. And it's really hard to sit down and approach everything exactly that way.
Yeah, yeah. Be more interesting. I need to be more interesting. You think people are going to like this? I think people are like, we're being interesting enough.
Well, it's terrifying. I do want to say real quick, it is terrifying getting on camera. And there is an understandable concern about that. However, that's the only way. There really is. I mean, that's the way that people pick up information these days. So we have to figure out a way around that.
Yeah. Okay. So this ties on to a question that's just popped up, which is, would you have any practical suggestions for starting a TikTok channel? So
make videos.
What do you need? A camera? Do you need a ring light? Do you need a editing team?
Film 5 videos. Film 5 videos and then figure out what it is you can do better and take it step by step. The hardest thing is to pick it up and get going. And I would encourage all of you to go look at my first 5 videos. They're embarrassing, deeply. And that is exactly where I started. And I think that when you put that much effort into a 2 or 3 minute video of 8 to 10 hours, you get really, really knowledgeable about exactly what's in that, and it gives you a great opportunity to continue to refine yourself. If you can just do one thing better every single video, you're doing great. I expect your first 25 to 50 videos to do nothing. You know, that's your learning period. And so the biggest thing to get started is to pick up your phone and record a video. Don't worry about the lighting or the mic or any of that stuff. You don't need any of that. Just record something and then do better next time.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to open, I think Tony Ward in the chat is happy to come on camera because he's got his hand up. So I'm going to bring him in a second to ask his question. But one of the things that we've done in the last few months with some of our PTS members is we've forced them to do a video in order to be able to be involved in one of our promotional activities. And so many people have said thank you, because it finally made them step out of that comfort zone, finally made them sit, take number 47, take number 48, whatever it took to get them to that point. And now they've done it, they're happy, and they're going to be creating more videos. So I think that from my perspective, the message is similar. Just start, just do it. Right, I'm bringing Tony Ward in. If Tony wants to unmute, and if you want to put your video on, you can, Tony. Tony's a PTS member, Great Britain Stamps, and covers on booth number B15.
15. B15, yeah. I can't see where to put the camera on, but never mind, not a problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you
sir.
loud and clear, Tony. Ask your question.
Okay, cool. Leven, this is so inspiring, this stuff. I've started doing videos a little bit, but not on TikTok. I've written down about 100 times. It's about narrative. It's about the story you're telling. Is there any correlation between finding something obscure within the history of what you're looking at, or something more obvious, or doesn't it really matter?
Are you Empire Stamps on TikTok?
No, I'm not on TikTok. No.
Okay. I think that that's my favorite part about my material is I pick up stuff all over the place. I mean, I did one on a little blue booklet that I had found at our local swap meet here in town. I'm actually waiting. My mom is mailing me her fake ID from 1974, and I'm going to do a TikTok on that. I think that that's the great thing, is that literally every item holds a story. It's up to you as a researcher and as a presenter to unlock that story and then present it in such a way that it's not only absorbable but interesting to folks that you're presenting it to. Did that answer your question, Tony?
It did. Thank you so much. Yes.
Lovely to meet you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tony.
sir. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Another question. Oh my goodness, we've got so many questions now here. Hi, Leven. It's 3 Stunned Stamps here. Do you adjust your videos between TikTok and now on YouTube to cater to the different audiences? My TikTok video that went well, I think, got a comment on YouTube that I must slow down with the talking pace. Haha, I always have to slow down with the talking pace. So do you have to, do you edit them slightly differently depending on the platforms that you use?
No, I make my content and then I post it. At some point I may do something YouTube specific, but I'm posting, anywhere between 4 and 6 videos a week. And to be honest with you, it's all I can do to just do that. It is an enormous amount of effort to do that. And I think that it's interesting that I didn't expect to do well on YouTube because my videos are so short. But in my first 40 videos, I think I've had 3 or 4 go over at least 1,000 views, and one of them hit over 3,000 views. With I think like 130 subscribers right now, which I think is really shows that as long as you're interesting, that's the key part. If you can figure out a way to be interesting, everything else is easy. Like that's the key part, is finding a way to make that connection with your audience. And by the way, 3 Stun on TikTok has been a fantastic supporter and follower for a long time, and I really appreciate all of their support.
Great, that's nice. It is a nice community. Everybody's supportive, and I just want to say as well, and I'm sure Leven will agree with this, that if you do those first 5 videos, and if you do it, step out your comfort zone and do it, tag us in it, and we'll watch it and we'll give you feedback, and we will learn.
100%. Absolutely.
We will learn. We will be like, that was brilliant. We're going to take that advice from or copy what you're doing as you develop over those 5 videos. So we have one. I think we're probably on the last question now, because we will have to close. So the last question is, Leven, you have talked about the media and promotion of the future of philately, but can you share a little about the aspect of access to information?
Not sure I understand the question.
So this is relating to it is imperative to connect collectors, dealers, auction houses, museums.
Okay, can you repeat it for me one more time?
When you're doing your research, how easy is it for you to get access to the information?
Because I'm only doing 2 to 5 minute videos, most of the stuff that I need, I can find fairly easily on the internet or through my own sources. I think if I started doing longer videos, there definitely would be a lot more cost involved because I'd need to be borrowing books and things of that nature from the APRL. But I think that if you can't find specifically what you're looking for, it's easy to say, this is the best way and the only way to tell it, and I want all of this information. And I think that drive towards perfection is completely unnecessary. What you really want to do is get somebody to go, and that's all you want. You just want somebody to give that little moment of that. I'd not considered that. And that's really all you're looking for.
Yep. Okay, one more question, sorry, because it's a good one.
No problem.
And then we have to move into the roundtable. So Leven and I are going to leave everybody here, and we're going to close the webinar after this question, and then we're going to go into the roundtables. If you find the one with Leven's name on it, take a seat. If there's one left, I could see that people were already sitting down before even this talk started. Then you know, we can carry on the conversation. But here's the last question: with the narrative focus appreciated by audiences, do you think there could be a market shift for more interesting ephemera rather than what seems to be a focus on rarity and condition today?
I think that they go hand in hand. I think that the more people understand ephemera and the more people understand items, I think that one of the fantastic parts about postal history is that rarity doesn't necessarily mean dollars. I mean, I have in my Wyoming collection, I have dozens of items literally that are literally unique, that there is nothing else like them. And the vast majority of those items I've picked up for under $100. The truth is you can make up for lack of cash with good research, and that's true in so many different areas. I mean, I think that there's almost no area of philately where deeper scholarship couldn't lead you to fantastic items.
You're getting thumbs up from the audiences and reactions in the chat, just so you know. Okay, I am going to close this webinar and we're going to all move it. I think all of us, there's too many people to fit in the roundtable. So go. Thank you so much, Leven. There's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for answering everyone's questions, and we look forward to connecting.
Thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leven. See you in the roundtable.
All right, see you there.